Okay. All right, it's running. All right, this is Marty Wilson speaking, and it's June 21st, 2011. It's about 2 o'clock, 7 minutes after 2 in the afternoon, and I'm sitting in the home of Esther Motts up on Sullivan Trail, and it was suggested to me that I interview Esther because apparently she's been around for a while. So, Esther, why don't we begin with where you were born, when you were born, who your parents were, that kind of stuff.
Well, I was born Esther Raish, R-A-I-S-H, in Stroudsburg. But right after that, my grandfather lived down here, the road here. And so they moved up here and bought a farm here. And then from then on, our whole family was raised there. Our family, I was the second one in the family, but there was 5 of us. And then we went to school down here in Tannersville, where that little pond is. The schoolhouse burnt down in later years.
So you grew up just up the street here, up the road here?
Yep, I grew up here on the Sullivan Trail, yeah.
And what year were you born?
1919.
1919. And
a lot of years.
Yeah, it's a long.
I'm 91 years old.
No kidding.
I was born the day before Christmas, the night before Christmas. Yep.
Yeah. How about that? So, and your mom's name was, what was your mom's name?
Hattie Smith, she was, and then she married Daddy, which was a Raish.
Uh-huh.
And so I was a Raish too then, naturally.
Okay. And you were one of 5.
Yeah.
And what were your brothers and sisters' names?
Oh, the first one was Gladys, and she died rather young. She had a child, but she died young. And then there was me. And then there was Harry and Lita and Bill. Oh, there was 6 of us. And then Carl.
Okay.
So, yeah, I missed class when I counted, I guess. But we all grew up on the farm. We grew up on the farm. We lived just at the foot of the hill where you started going up there. And it was a sleigh riding place, you know. And we didn't have toys like they have today. We had homemade sleigh ride, boards fend up and go down those boards. And like that, I had a very happy life. I can't complain. And then I can't tell you what year it was that I started working with the state because I forget. But I worked up on top Big Pocono.
Well, let's get to that, but let's take it up. You went to school down here, elementary school.
Yeah.
What was the name? Was it Tannersville?
It was 12 grades down there.
Oh, yeah?
And it was a brick school. And I dearly, dearly miss that school because it burnt down.
I remember. I was in that school before it burned down, so I remember it. It wasn't that big to have 12 grades.
No, it wasn't big. It had 12 grades in, but see, there wasn't many people in a grade. You understand? It wasn't so many people like there is now.
Well, did each class have its own classroom? I mean, that is, 5th grade was in one room and 6th grade was in another?
No, there was 12 rooms.
Yeah.
And, of course, one room took care of the, where they had, what do they call it? It's auditorium.
Uh-huh.
They was in there, in the 12th grade.
Now, did you go to 12th grades? Did you graduate?
I went 12 years, but I quit in that last year to go to work.
Why?
Because I had this job on the mountain in the fire tower. And that's all I cared about. My dad was a forest inspector. And I just thought it was nothing like forestry. That was all there was. So they left me quit school and go in that up there. And that's where I spent my whole life, on Big Pocono.
Up on the mountain?
Yeah.
So you were in a fire station?
One of
those towers?
Well, now, I was in a fire tower for about 4 years, I guess. And then the state hired me to go into the park and make a park out of it. You know, we cut brush, and we there's a little house up there. If you've never been up there, you should go up. There's a little house that a man years and years ago had built because they hiked from Long Pond across, and then they could stay in that house instead of staying in a tent.
Yeah.
And it was well built. We built out of stones, and it's a nice little place. And but I didn't stay there nights. I come home nights. We'd go back in the daytime, and then I stayed up in the fire tower. And if it rained, I went over it because we had so many visitors. See, it was a bus tour up on the top of that, and these buses would come up, and I'd talk to these people. So rather than talk out the window of the fire tower, I went over in the building. If it was real dry, I didn't go over. I stayed on the tower. But we only had about a month or so in the spring and a month or so in the fall that was dangerous of fires.
Mm-hmm.
And
so you were hired by the state to be a fire warden or whatever.
Yeah.
How'd you get up there every day?
Well, I had no jalopy.
Oh, yeah.
Went up. Yeah, I had no.
What was the condition of the road back then?
Yeah, sometimes I got stuck and somebody come along and dig me out. You know, that was nothing new. and I think I was stuck in every culvert all the way down the mountain. You know, they had culverts on. And I'd come down that mountain, and then it would be covered with ice. And I drove real slow, but it would just slide right off and down that culvert. And somebody'd come along and dig me out and push me out on the road again. And this was funny too, there was a couple of fellows come up, and there I was stuck on the steep of the mountain in that thing, and they come up on what do you call those? They were some kind of ski boards. They were, but they had motors in them, you know. And they was coming up the hill. Well, they wasn't supposed to be on the mountain, and they stopped and dug me out and put me out on the road again. And then when I told the story to the boy, he said, "Well, gee, you should have had them arrested. They're not supposed to have them things up the mountain." I said, "They dug me out and let me go." I said, it's kind of funny now. I hadn't thought about that for years. And then, I took up taxidermy work. After I was no longer on the tower, I was in the office there. Well, I took up taxidermy work at nights and my days off. And that road kills, I've had road kills only, but I had people bring stuff, all kinds of birds and just unimaginable, and I mounted them, and then I put them in showcases in the office there. And then the buses found out, see all these resorts over here, they found out that I had this, and that was a good place to take the people, you know, in the bus load, and it was free. Mm-hmm. And they'd bring the bus load of people over there, and then I talked on the wildlife and told them.
Do they still exist?
Pardon me?
Those stuffed animals, are they still in existence? Do they still?
Yes, they are, and I'll tell you where they are in case you want to go.
Yeah, please.
They're down in I don't know what they call it. I think they call it the you know where Bartonsville is?
Yeah.
Well, you turn right at Bartonsville, mm-hmm. and you go down that road, and it's the first road to the right. And you go in there, and you just go till you see this big building up on the hill. And I guess it's run by the county. And they got my animals in there. Aye. They took them. I was so glad, because when I retired, I didn't like to leave them there, but I know people would steal them. Yeah. They did steal a lot, but still, I was glad that they're there in case you ever want to go down. Like.
Yeah, sure. Good. So how long did you work up on the mountain then?
Oh my gosh, I can't tell you. I just offhand.
But most of your adult life?
Oh, yes, certainly. Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah.
And first you were a fire warden, and then you worked in the office?
Yeah, and then I worked in the office.
What'd you do in the office?
Well, as I told you, I did taxidermy work and entertained people when they come in and signed their books and stuff like that they would have, you know.
Uh-huh.
And so it was, and then I had to keep the park clean too, you know. I had to go up early in the morning, pick up all tin cans and stuff and trash that people threw around, and I had to make sure the road was okay, and then I had to cut brush. I had one man work for me a couple of years there, and we was out along the road and the brush had coming out towards the road pretty good, so I got down on my hands and knees with my chainsaw and saw it, and the chainsaw stopped. Now nobody can tell me God didn't do that. The chainsaw stopped, and then I heard the rattlesnake, and the guy that was working with, he said, "Look right in front of you," and there it was. It was only about this far from my hands, from my. Well, I got out of there in a hurry.
Wow.
But he killed the snake. I almost was sorry to see it dead, you know. Yeah. It didn't bite me, thank goodness. But, yeah, we had rattlesnakes. We had one in the office one time, and I was in the back room there working, and the door was open, and you could see through from the front room to the back, through the crack. And the one guy said, "Hey, look behind the door there. What's behind the door?" So I looked in the crack, and there was a rattlesnake in the office, up on a stand there. And well, it's got to go. And so one of the guys killed it and threw it outside. We had a lot of rattlesnakes back then, and they never. Well, a couple of people got bit, but they were dumb, you know. They went and they tried to catch it. Well, you don't go catching a rattlesnake. Right. You learn to live with it, but that was it. And I had pleasant work. I had hard work. I had dirty work. I had to keep the outhouses clean and stuff like that, but I didn't mind at all. Up there all by myself until they hired my help. And was you ever up on the mountain?
I've been up there a couple of times, yeah.
Beautiful.
It's beautiful.
Yeah.
Quite a view.
Yeah, beautiful. And the old man that had that building built was, years and years ago, Mr. Cattell. He stayed up at Pocono Manor Inn, and they walked across and down and up there. And then he loved that place, so he had this building built, and that's why that's there. And I guess it'll always be there, I hope. And the wind ripped the roof pretty bad, but they fixed the roof. And then with my taxidermy work now, I had a lot of buses to see that, because I had showcases in where you come in. The vestibule had all kinds of rabbits and local stuff, you know.
Did you ever do a snake?
I had snakes. Yeah, I had rattlesnakes. But I didn't have them mounted. I had them in alcohol in a jug. Yeah. And they answered the same purpose. Yeah.
So you worked up there for your adult life until you retired. Where did you meet her? Was there a Mr. Motts? I'm assuming there was a Mr. Motts?
Yeah.
How'd you meet your husband?
Forrest Motts. He died. Yeah.
How'd you meet him?
How did I meet him? I met him at a meeting. He was married and had a couple kids. And they were very nice people, very nice. And then I was alone. Well, I was married before that. I was married, and my husband just left me. He had other women he liked better, I guess, and that was all right. But I already had this house built, but not the whole house, not this living room. This living room was built on here after the flood. You know, the flood came down, washed the parlor off there, and so now they built this on. And then the reason it's built so big, you're not going to believe this, but somebody give them a pool table, them fellas. And so we had a pool table in over there. And then this was livable, and I built a fireplace on here. And it was funny, one of the ministers was here, and I said, that fireplace is metal inside. And he said, no, it's not. And I said, yes, it is. I said, that's a metal that we bought and then built around. And he said, well, no. He said, you can see a brick. He said, it's brick. I said, no, that isn't brick. I painted it cream color and drawed lines there and made it look like brick because we don't use it anymore.
Wow. Yeah, I would say it's brick. From here it looks like brick.
Yeah, it looked. I was kind of glad somebody said something, because that made it look more like brick. But the metal was getting rusted and thinned. It could be fixed up and heated, used again. But we sealed the chimney off. After my husband died, I didn't need a fireplace to carry wood in or anything like that, and they fixed this up for me.
So were either of your husbands associated with the park up there, or were they also in forestry? Or?
No, he was not with forestry. He was he was a state forest inspector. Now that would be for fires only, fires or anything to do like that. Mm-hmm. And I was with forestry, but it was another division entirely. Mm-hmm. And he worked out of Scott Run over here, and I worked out of Stroudsburg. Yeah, it was a very good job, and I'm not sorry I had it. And when I sat on the tower, I'm going to give you don't let me forget to give you a poem book. One of mine. I wrote poetry when I sat on the fire tower, and every month it was printed in a magazine that went out, forestry magazine.
No kidding.
So then somebody collected the best ones and had them put into a book, and which is good here. Suppose you get it.
Yeah,
it's right there. That one right there.
Poetry of Pocono Pete. Oh, there's a picture of you. Yeah. So how did you get the name Pocono Pete? Where's that come from?
Well, Pocono, that was simple, and I was Pete all my life. That darn light, didn't I? They said when I was real tiny, they used to tease me because I talked funny, I'm 1 year old, And there was a guy by the name of Pete Johnson, lived up to the end of the road here, an old man. And he had an old Model T Ford, and he went up the road, and Uncle Frank Smith was holding me on a lap, and there was a window right there where I could see this car go by. And I said, oh, there goes somebody. And they said, yeah, that's, how did he say? That was Pete Johnson. And, just little, they said, they tell me. And then after a while, he said, what's your name? And I said, Pete. That's all they need. They just thought that was the best. So they called me Pete all my life. School teachers and everybody called me Pete. I liked my name, Esther, but and I didn't care what they called me.
So anyway, you were up on the mountain for a long time. What were some of the big changes up there? Like when was the road paved? Do you remember that?
I don't remember what year, but yes, it was when busloads of people would come up in a lot of cars, when we got the museum up there. That attracted them even more, because on a cloudy day you couldn't see nothing, but they come to see that, because they could see it. And so then it's so hard to tell why we had more people. Well, I guess I think they still have people. I think they still have them up there. Mm-hmm. But when we had, when I was on the tower, people wanted to get up in the tower. Well, I wasn't allowed to leave them in the tower. They could come up on the steps, but couldn't get them in the tower. And then when I got over in the office, they just come and drove, busloads. And I would talk to them. I didn't have a museum or anything, but I talked to them what this mountain is, and that's Mount Pocono over there where you see a little, and then on around, and that's down in Jersey and New York State and Jersey and Delaware Water Gap, explained, and the people that come on a bus, that really fascinated them. So then out in the park, I had a round concrete pipe set up, and I put a map on the top of that concrete. So when I wasn't there, they could go to that thing and they'd go around, what we're looking at there, we're seeing that,
Yeah.
And that was a big thing. It's not there, I don't think, anymore. They got a big monument. They have a big monument and got my name onto it up there.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah.
Wow.
I was fascinated about that because I never thought they appreciated it much, but they did. But see, Mr. Pyle and Bob, can't think what his last name is. It was 3 different men that worked for forestry that kept pushing for this because they loved the mountain too, and that's why I was there in the first place. It was really them putting me on the fire tower. And we had some bad fires. One time I remember, the scaredest I ever was of a fire was out from the tower going towards Deep Lake. The woods was on fire. Somebody sets it on fire for Huckleberrys. And it was on fire. Well, my father was a forest inspector, and I called him and told him there's a fire out there. And he said, oh, well, we'll get right up. So he got the gang together, the firemen, and went up, and they thought they put it out. They didn't put it out, but they didn't tell me that they left. And here I sat there in the fire tower and wondered, well, boy, it takes a long time to get that. It's getting awful close. And then I could see, well, there's no trucks, no nothing. So I called down home. Daddy said, well, the fire was out when they left. Somebody else must have reset it, or else the spark was set off. And he said, oh, well, get off the phone. I said, so he got the fire company because he said, now don't try to run from it. Stay on the tower. And it was right up at the foot of the tower down. But see, where the tower is, there's a blacktop parking area. And that would protect me. Yeah. If I had to, I could go down in the parking area. But he said, stay on the tower, so I did. And then those trucks come up there and they just put it out so fast. But they didn't very often call fire company to put out a woods fire. But sometimes it was necessary.
Now you said that people would set the woods on fire to get huckleberries?
Yeah.
How'd that work?
Well, see, if the bush burned, then new shoots would come out. And the new shoots would be just loaded with berries.
Oh.
And that's what they did.
Huh.
And some area every year would burn. Because these huckleberry pickers, they sold huckleberries,
Huh.
They get them by carloads.
They ever catch them?
Pardon me?
Did they ever catch them? Did the police ever catch these people?
Oh, yeah, they come, but what are you going to do with them?
Hmm.
You know, it's like they say to lock them up and feed them. What good is that? You might just well tell them if ever again what's going to cost you a fortune, and then they don't do it, but somebody else does it, you know. See, things, you got to understand, things back then was different than they are now. My gosh, now they might take them and hang them if they did it twice, but they didn't punish anybody that severely.
Huh.
In the first place, if you take them back then, take them in jail, it cost a fortune to keep them because they have to feed them and give them stuff to drink and stuff, and they didn't lock them up very often. Sometimes they made them hard labor, you know, they did that, which was sensible.
Huh.
But,
Well,
yeah.
so let me ask you about did Camelback have any impact on what you were doing up there, or when they opened Camelback?
Camelback. You see, it was called Camelback because somebody named it because it's shaped like Camelback. But no, they didn't have anything. And right now, I don't think the state even owns any of it. It might own well where the fire tower is in the park and up there, but down over the side there, Camelback owns that. You know, they got swimming and all of that.
Yeah.
They have skiing in the winter time, but that's owned by Camelback.
All right. Well.
Yeah.
So you had an interesting life up there.
Yeah, and everything has changed. I don't get up very often. In the first place, my leg was bad, and I have to wait till somebody take me. Because I'm going to tell you a sad thing, and I'm not going to cry. I'm going to tell you. I had 6 brothers and sisters, and they're all dead, but me. And just the past, I would say, 8 years, they all died. Then my cousin down the road here, he come up and helped me with in the winter time, plow out and stuff like that, because I didn't have nobody to help me. And he dropped over dead. And then I had nobody. His wife come here, and I couldn't hardly even talk to her. This was just lately. And I wish she'd come back because I'm collecting myself more now. That's all there is to it. But my mother and my father, my aunts, all my aunts and uncles are gone. And my cousins, had wonderful cousins, and they're all passed away. And I'm all glad I don't have any brothers or sisters or anybody. I'm all that's left in our family.
Now, who is Bud Bonser?
What?
Bud Bonser? Do you know
Bud Bonser?
Yeah.
Yeah, Bud Bonser is my nephew. Now, this is funny. Bud Bonser and his wife, they lived around the corner here, and they got a business going. And I never saw him. I never talked to him, never knew him or anything. And I sat here after everything was calm and I didn't have anybody. I sat here crying, and I thought, what am I going to do? I don't have anybody. And this man come in the door. He come in and he sit down over there and I said, hello. And he said, you know me, I'm Bud. And I said, Bud? You're Bud from up the road? And he said, yeah. He said, is there anything I can do for you, Pete? And I said, well, not right offhand. I said, but hang around a little bit. Then in comes this lady. And then I remembered her looks, and I thought, they're connected, that's his wife.
Excuse me,
And
just a
sure
second.
enough,
Go ahead, keep talking. Okay, go ahead. Sorry about that.
sure enough, it was his wife. And you can't imagine what 2 people did for me I was just about out. I wanted to die is what I wanted because I had nobody else. And it picked me up so that I just can't get over it. Now, she comes down now and she helps me with my paperwork. When you work for the state for the rest of your life, you'll have paperwork to do. And so she helps me with that, and so I don't make no mistakes. And he come and he mowed my grass all around, and it's just been unbelievable. But they're the only two that I got. I don't have no. I have a friend that lives up on the hill there. She comes down and takes me to the store once in a while. And then it's been about 3-4 months ago, I was going down the road here with my car, and down where you have to stop on 715, and I stopped there, and this car come around, and he almost got me. It was a black guy, and I was so scared, you can't even imagine. So I was going to the store, and I went on down to the store, and I was so nervous I couldn't think of what I wanted. I thought, I'm giving up the car. So I come home, and I called the guy down to the garage in Bartonsville there and told him, I said, I'm going to give up my car. And he said, well, don't give it to anybody else. He said, wait till I come and I'll buy it. So he come up and he bought my car. And people thought, well, I was nuts, but I said, no, I didn't want no part of driving, no more. And because they would, if that guy would have run in me, and said, well, how old are you? 91 years old. Oh my God, still driving a car at 91, it would have been my fault.
Yeah.
So they can't blame that on me no more. And now I pay that lady up there to take me to the grocery store and stuff. I have a daughter, and she lives in Augusta, Georgia. She works at Fort Gordon. And they were up here about a month ago, and but they don't get up here very often because it's so darn far away, and I'm satisfied. But my husband died a long time ago.
So you have just the one child, just one daughter?
Just two, yeah.
So what? Looking back from 91 years old, what thing are you most proud of, do you think?
The thing I'm most proud of? Oh boy, that would have required.
Let me rephrase that. I assume it's your family and your daughter and everything, but in terms of your professional life and working on the mountain, those kinds of things.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. Yeah. Well, if I could say it, I'm the proudest of the population that kept coming back to Big Pocono when I worked up there. Because I worked in the office, and I had to go out in the morning and clean toilets and everything, get everything ready, and then I was in there. And then these busloads would come. And I'm proud of the fact that they would come back and question me and want me to talk to their family and this. Oh, I got to tell you, they'll be on here one.
You don't want it on here, or you do?
Well, maybe better not. Well, it's not too awful, but a man and a woman walked back to Deep Lake. It's 2 miles back to Deep Lake. And they come back, and he was so proud. This old guy had this in his hand. He said, I'm sure of what I got, but I want you to verify it. He said, I found some bear droppings. Well, a little bit of wad like this, and he opened it. I said, that's a cut of tobacco that somebody spit out. And he looked and said, it is. A lot of little funny things like that happened that made the whole job worthwhile. And my father was forest inspector, and then after my dad died, or just before he died, then my brother Bill become forest inspector, and he built a house right behind mine back there, and he lived back there, but he died. It's the same as the rest of my family died. I can't believe it. you know, it's hard to believe when you had a big family around, you know, and aunts and uncles, and all the aunts and uncles are gone. You're still there. But the reason I'm still here, I'm 91, you know. I lived on borrowed time. And I think the Lord works in mysterious ways. Why did that come to my back door?
Yeah.
And as soon as my nephews, I said, well, I daresn't take it. I said, I don't have anybody to leave it to. And he said, yeah, you do. You leave it to me. He said, that's my dog, too. He said, but why don't you have it fixed? And I said, oh, I'd love to. And he said, we'll get in the car and we'll go over to Broadsville and had it altered. And it's just unbelievable. It's a Shar-Pei.
Shar-Pei, yeah.
Yeah.
That's right. That's what. So it's a good companion, right?
Oh yeah, and he lays in that chair because I put a blanket on that chair. And he
so I'm
lays
sitting in
there,
his
and
chair.
I sit here and we watch television now. And I'll get up and I say, "Well, I'll kiss you on the forehead," and he'll put his head down like that. So I kissed him on the head.
Yeah. All right. Well, is there anything else I should have asked you about? Anything else that you want to talk about? What that you've done in this long life of yours?
No, I had wonderful bosses. I had Mr. Pyle was one of the greatest men I ever knew in forestry. He was a superintendent of forestry down in Stroudsburg. And Bob Pierce, I guess they're all dead. They were all old people, but Bob Pierce, he was worked for him, and he was always nice to me. And then when they had to go flying through the air to see where this fire would be, you know, because the area was so big then, they had to fly around and see where it was. Well, they'd always wave out the window, you know. It can make your job interesting, you know. And you sit there. I'd sometimes sit there 12 hours, you know. If fire was at night, I couldn't leave. I had to stay up there. And it was a wonderful job. I'm not going to complain about it one bit. It was a wonderful job. I got good money back then. Now I guess wouldn't be considered much, but anything I needed I could get. And
you spent your time writing poetry.
Yep, I did.
So do you have any thoughts on what's going on today in the Poconos with all the people moving in from New York and New York?
Oh yeah, I'd like to go up once in a while, but I got no way to go at Camelback. I'd like to see what's going on now. They're open. There's swimming pool, you know. That was all covered over for the winter because they skied across it.
Yeah.
And now it's opened up for swimming.
Mm-hmm.
And I haven't been up to see that. The only time I got up was about a month ago. A lady lived up on the hill. Her son worked up there, and she took me up, but we just drove through and picked him up and come back down. And yeah, Camelback. When we first heard of Camelback coming, where it was at the foot of the mountain, down in that field where all those houses are now. It was in that field. And they'd pull them up by the rope, and they had an old car up on the railroad that run and pulled them up. Mm-hmm. And then they'd ski down there. You know, that was the first ski run. And it went over big. They did. And when they found out how good it was made, boy, they made a real ski run up there, you know. Mm-hmm. And they certainly are doing good business too, don't you think they are? The restaurants and everything else there is doing good. And I'm glad for them. You know, when they first come, I was awful jealous about this. You know, I didn't want all that traffic around our house. This is our traffic, and we can't have dogs, we can't have cats or none that get run over. That ain't the way it happened at all. the dogs and cats learned to stay out of the road. I don't have a cat anymore, but I got this dog, and it's something that you have to live with. You can't. What are they? Development and progress in the world. To be up with the Joneses. They had to have a ski run.
Mm-hmm.
And the first ski run that they had a truck up there, and that truck pulled them up the mountain to the railroad, and then they got out and they went down. It was only, wasn't very high at all, but that's what started Camelback then. Then they went on up on the top of the mountain and come down over. And you see the ambulances go by, why? Quite often.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, somebody, and every once in a while somebody gets killed too.
Yeah.
They don't seem to see danger. Now, I would never do anything that dumb. If I wanted to ski, it would have to be bare, just nothing but snow for about a half a mile, and then go down over that snow. If I fell, it would be in the snow, not down, and you just get off the gear and go over in the brush and down the rocks. And, but they come from the city and they don't realize that, I guess. I don't know.
So any regrets? Is there anything you would have done differently if you had it to do over again? Your life?
Well, I got married and I had a child. She's grown up. She just come to see me here about a couple of weeks ago. She's from down, she works at Augusta, Georgia, and she's up there in age too now. Tickled me because she said, "Mom, we know you got old because we're old." And I said, yeah, I know you're old.
Yeah.
But she went to school. Well, down here she went till that schoolhouse. I can't get it in my head that it burnt down because it was all brick. If they wanted to build those schools up here in Mount Pocono, because it wanted them all together, and then bust them up there. So I think that was a part of it. But if it ever did catch on fire, darn well it would burn down because those floors are oiled. They're not varnished, they're oiled. Mm-hmm. And that whole thing was oil. They had a big auditorium, and that would have burnt like crazy around that thing. I really cried when it burned down because it just seemed like something gone, that I lived with. Actually, when I started to school, it was down the old schoolhouse. It was down on the old 611. There was a schoolhouse there.
Let me turn this thing off if I can figure out how to do that. All right. There we go. Now it won't ring again.
Oh, well, now you could.
So there was a school down on 611.
Yeah. Well, there was a schoolhouse there, an old schoolhouse, and it had first floor and second floor. But then it got so they wouldn't dare to do that anymore because of fire. They would have to have a fire escape. So our church, the Methodist church, was the same way, and that was set alongside of it. And they had graveyards around. That's where I'll be planted, there. And they had a small area for graves, and that only had, that had an upstairs to it too. That's right. That's why they got rid of that. They got rid of that church and built one up here on the corner where you come in, and so we changed our way. We had Daddy had an old Model T Ford. You know what they were? Mm-hmm. But that was a new car then. And us kids used to get in there and sit in the back, and they'd take us to church. And life was good. But now that the church is gone, they still kept the graveyard, and my tombstone's there with my name on it. I bought my tombstone.
No kidding.
Because I don't have anybody left to do it, you know. I don't have any relative. That's the only trouble about living so old. I've outlived everybody.
Yeah.
Even neighbors around here I've outlived. I'm not griping. I'm glad because I've always been pretty well. I would say in the past year and a half, it's taken its toll on my legs.
Mm-hmm.
But those poor old legs, now sometimes when the road was icy, I walked up over the mountain and went up, you know, right behind the house here, and went up across the railroad and then on up on the top. And spent my day up there and had radio, you know, two-way radio and telephone. And I had a good life. When I think it over, I really had a good one. I had a lot of people say, "Oh my Lord, I wouldn't have lived like that." It's a wonder somebody didn't tackle you or something. I said, "Well, gee, what would that be to tackle? Hit them over the head with a stick or something." It'd be the last tackle they'd do. Hunting season, my dad always made me carry a gun. He said, because something wounded run out in front of you, you wouldn't want to leave it live. So I carried the gun. But I don't know whether I'd shoot it or not.
Never had to use it? No.
No. And there was a lot of wounded stuff around, but there was so many hunters in the woods that they find these wounded ones and kill them, deer. And I was just lucky to get this thing. And then when my nephew come and took me over there to get it fixed and all, he said, "Now you understand, Pete, if something happens to you, it's my dog." And I said, "Yeah, that's your dog." So, and that, by the way, that isn't, Esther isn't my name, it's Pete. They've called me Pete before I could remember. And they say the reason it was, there was an old man, Pete Johnson lived up at the end of the road. And I was sitting on my uncle's lap, and we had a bay wind up there in the farm, and I was sitting on his lap, and I saw it go by, and Uncle Arthur said, "There goes Pete Johnson." And I said, "Yeah, Pete." And he said, "Do you know Pete Johnson?" And I said, "It must have said yeah." And so then Uncle Arthur started calling me Pete, you know, that was, and that's all most people around here know me. They don't know my name is Esther.
So should I call you Pete or Esther?
Yeah, I don't care what you call me. It don't make a darn bit of difference. But,
all right, well, is there anything else you want to talk about? Anything else I should have asked you? Big events in your life, or?
No.
You think we covered it all?
I've had people write me up quite a bit before, you know.
Oh, yeah, good.
And I told them about the same stories, you know, and stuff like that. And we had the 55 flood, you know, was really, really, really bad. But I was lucky. It went down in front of the house here, and it went down back of the house. And a lot of cellar, the furnace and everything got full, but it didn't wash away. Now, up after you cross the bridge here and going up around, and my brother-in-law lived up there, and in a house, and the house washed right out and set out in the middle of the creek, out towards the road, the whole house. And but I had no complaints whatsoever. What washed away the foundation under this wasn't this big. It was only about 12 feet there. But when it washed away, why they built this extra on here. They had all kinds of. I had no say on what I wanted for a house. they wanted a place for a pool table. They wanted a pool table, so they put the pool table back there and built all this. Now you got a fireplace. You can keep warm. You can sit here and watch television. They had it all planned for me, so that was all right. I did no complaint. I really never did have much complaint about all my life. There was things that I didn't like, but I can't honestly say I had a hard life. Had some days, like everybody else, some days it's tough and the other days it's good.
Yeah.
So you don't always sit and think of the tough days, you sit and think of the good days.
Well, maybe that's a good note to end on.
Yeah.
Do you think we've come to an end, or?
Yeah.
Okay. Well, thanks very much. It was very interesting.